Welcome to Iraqi Dinar News, where you receive real and authentic updates about the Iraqi dinar. If you want to stay informed with moment-by-moment developments, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you for joining us once again, as we take a careful and balanced look at the latest discussions surrounding Iraq's economy, the Iraqi dinar, and the broader economic reforms that continue to attract attention from investors and market observers around the world. Today's discussion focuses on an interesting perspective that has been circulating within the Iraqi dinar community regarding the relationship between the hydrocarbon law, commonly referred to as the HCL, and any potential future changes involving the Iraqi dinar's exchange rate. The discussion also highlights the significance of recent oil agreements and why many analysts believe those developments deserve close attention from anyone following Iraq's long-term economic transformation. As always, it is important to separate analysis from speculation. Financial markets, national currencies, and government policy are driven by a combination of economic fundamentals, legal reforms, institutional development, political stability, and international confidence. No single event should be viewed in isolation, and no single announcement automatically guarantees a particular outcome for a nation's currency. The latest comments suggest that there has long been a debate within the Iraqi dinar community regarding the sequence of two major developments. One viewpoint argues that Iraq's hydrocarbon law must first be finalized before any significant monetary reform involving the Iraqi dinar could occur. Another viewpoint suggests the opposite sequence, proposing that monetary reform could happen first, followed shortly afterward by implementation of the hydrocarbon law, rather than focusing on which event might technically occur first. Many analysts instead emphasize that these two developments are closely connected because both represent broader components of Iraq's long-term economic modernization strategy. To understand why this discussion continues to receive so much attention, it helps to understand what the hydrocarbon law represents. The hydrocarbon law has been discussed in Iraq for many years. At its core, the legislation is intended to establish a comprehensive legal framework governing the management of Iraq's oil and gas resources. Iraq possesses some of the world's largest proven oil reserves, making petroleum exports the backbone of the country's economy and the largest contributor to government revenue. A well-defined legal framework can provide greater certainty regarding how oil revenues are managed, how contracts are administered, how production is coordinated between the federal government and regional authorities, and how revenues are distributed among different parts of the country. For domestic businesses, international energy companies, financial institutions, and global investors, legal certainty matters tremendously. Investors generally prefer environments where laws are clearly defined, contracts are enforceable, and government policy remains predictable over time. This is one reason why discussions surrounding the hydrocarbon law frequently appear alongside conversations about Iraq's broader economic reforms. When observers speak about the Iraqi dinar, they often recognize that currency strength is influenced by confidence in the underlying economy. Confidence itself is built gradually through institutional reforms, legal stability, fiscal discipline, banking modernization, and sustainable economic growth. That is why many economists caution against viewing any single law as an immediate trigger for currency movement. Instead, legislation often forms part of a larger reform process that improves the country's investment environment over many years. The recent comments also reference several oil contracts and agreements that reportedly attracted attention during the past week. Although individual contracts vary in scope and commercial terms, the broader significance lies in what these agreements may represent for Iraq's energy sector. Oil remains Iraq's primary economic engine. Every successful energy investment has the potential to support future production capacity, infrastructure development, employment opportunities, technology transfer, government revenue, and international commercial partnerships. When global companies commit capital to large-scale energy projects, they often do so only after conducting extensive economic analysis, legal reviews, and risk assessments. Their willingness to invest may reflect confidence in Iraq's long-term economic potential, even while acknowledging that challenges remain. For followers of the Iraqi dinar, this distinction is important. Strong oil agreements do not automatically translate into changes in exchange rate policy. However, They can strengthen one of the fundamental pillars supporting Iraq's economy over the long run. A healthier energy sector can generate higher export revenues. Higher export revenues can improve government finances. Improved government finances may strengthen foreign exchange reserves. Stronger reserves can provide additional stability for the country's financial system. Greater financial stability may improve confidence among domestic and international investors. This sequence illustrates how economic development typically occurs through interconnected steps rather than sudden isolated events. One reason discussions about oil contracts receive considerable attention is because Iraq's economy remains heavily dependent on petroleum exports, government spending, infrastructure investment, public sector salaries, social programs, and many development initiatives rely on revenue generated from oil exports. As Iraq continues pursuing economic diversification, oil revenue still provides the financial foundations supporting many of those broader reform efforts. Therefore, any agreement that enhances production efficiency, expands infrastructure, increases investment, or strengthens international cooperation naturally becomes relevant to discussions about Iraq's long-term economic outlook. It is equally important to recognize that monetary policy operates independently from commercial oil agreements. The central bank's responsibilities include maintaining monetary stability, managing inflation, preserving confidence in the banking system, supervising financial institutions, and supporting overall economic stability. Exchange rate decisions involve complex economic analysis rather than reactions to individual commercial developments. Central banks typically evaluate inflation trends, reserve levels, fiscal conditions, trade balance, banking sector health, international financial relationships, and broader macroeconomic indicators before making significant policy adjustments. Therefore, while oil agreements may contribute positively to Iraq's economic environment, they represent only one component among many factors considered by policymakers. Another reason the discussion remains relevant involves investor psychology. Financial markets often respond not only to measurable economic data, but also to expectations regarding future reforms. Announcements involving infrastructure projects, international partnerships, legal modernization, and institutional reforms may influence market sentiment because they suggest continued progress toward broader economic objectives. However, responsible analysis requires distinguishing between positive momentum and confirmed policy decisions. Positive momentum indicates that reforms continue advancing. Confirmed policy decisions involve official announcements from authorized government institutions. Maintaining that distinction helps avoid unrealistic expectations while encouraging objective analysis. Another important aspect worth considering is the role of foreign direct investment. Countries seeking long-term economic growth often compete to attract international investment. Investors generally evaluate political stability, legal transparency, infrastructure quality, labor availability, regulatory consistency, taxation policies, banking services, and currency stability before committing capital. If Iraq continues strengthening these areas, it may gradually become increasingly attractive to international businesses operating beyond the energy sector. Diversification remains one of Iraq's long-term economic priorities. Although oil currently dominates government revenue, policymakers have frequently expressed interest in expanding manufacturing, agriculture, transportation, technology, tourism, logistics, financial services, and private sector development. Successful diversification could eventually reduce dependence on oil price fluctuations, while creating broader sources of economic growth. Such diversification may also strengthen long-term confidence in Iraq's overall economy. From the perspective of Iraqi Dinar followers, this broader context deserves careful attention. Many discussions understandably focus on exchange rates, yet exchange rates themselves often reflect underlying economic fundamentals. Strong institutions, sustainable growth, responsible fiscal management, efficient banking systems, competitive private sectors, and legal certainty collectively contribute to long-term currency confidence. Looking specifically at the hydrocarbon law, its broader economic importance extends beyond energy production alone. Clear legislation can reduce uncertainty surrounding investment decisions. It can improve coordination among different levels of government. It can strengthen contract enforcement. It can support more transparent revenue management. It can encourage additional international participation within Iraq's energy industry. Each of these improvements contributes incrementally to economic confidence. Confidence cannot be created overnight. It develops gradually as reforms are implemented consistently over time. Likewise, confidence can diminish if reforms stall or uncertainty increases. This is why analysts continue monitoring legal reforms alongside monetary policy discussions. The recent comments also illustrate another important point. Within the Iraqi dinar community, different analysts often interpret identical developments differently. Some emphasize legal reforms. Others focus on banking modernization. Some prioritize political stability. Others monitor international financial relationships. Still others concentrate on reserve levels, inflation, digital payment expansion, customs modernization, or anti-money laundering reforms. In reality, all of these areas interact with one another. Economic reform is rarely driven by a single factor. Instead, it resembles a network of interconnected initiatives progressing simultaneously. As Iraq continues implementing modernization efforts, observers may see developments occurring across multiple sectors at the same time. Banking reforms may coincide with legal reforms. Energy investments may occur alongside infrastructure projects. Digital payment initiatives may expand, while customs systems become more efficient. International partnerships may develop alongside domestic regulatory improvements. Each initiative contributes a piece to the broader economic picture. This broader perspective helps explain why many analysts welcomed recent oil agreements, rather than viewing them as isolated commercial transactions. They interpret them as additional evidence that Iraq continues pursuing economic development through cooperation with international partners. Whether those agreements ultimately achieve their intended objectives will depend upon successful implementation, continued investment, operational efficiency, and long-term policy consistency. Implementation remains just as important as announcement. Throughout economic history, countries have announced ambitious projects that later encountered delays or revisions. Responsible financial analysis therefore emphasizes monitoring progress after agreements are signed, construction timelines, production targets, infrastructure development, financing arrangements, and regulatory implementation all influence eventual economic impact. For Iraqi dinar followers, patience remains essential. Large-scale national economic reforms often unfold over many years rather than weeks or months. Major infrastructure investments require planning, financing, construction, regulatory oversight, workforce development, and operational testing before delivering measurable economic results. Similarly, legal reforms frequently require implementing regulations, institutional coordination, administrative procedures, and practical enforcement before their full benefits become visible. Another consideration involves international financial credibility. Countries seeking deeper integration into global financial markets benefit from demonstrating policy consistency. Predictable governance encourages lenders, multinational corporations, institutional investors, development organizations, and international financial institutions to engage more confidently. As Iraq continues strengthening its financial institutions and regulatory environment, these improvements may gradually enhance international confidence. That confidence, however, develops through sustained performance rather than isolate announcements. It is also useful to remember that exchange rate policy reflects national economic priorities. Governments seek monetary policies supporting price stability, sustainable growth, competitive exports, manageable inflation, and financial system resilience. Consequently, any future monetary decisions would likely reflect comprehensive economic evaluation, rather than a single legislative milestone. For viewers following Iraqi dinar developments every day, today's discussion reinforces an important principle. Meaningful economic progress often occurs through accumulation. Each successful reform builds upon previous reforms. Each institutional improvement supports future improvements. Each investment strengthens economic capacity. Each legal clarification reduces uncertainty. Together, these developments gradually shape the investment environment. This gradual approach may appear less dramatic than speculation often circulating online, but it more accurately reflects how national economies evolve. History demonstrates that durable economic progress usually results from disciplined policy implementation rather than sudden transformations. Countries that strengthen institutions, improve governance, attract investment, modernize banking systems, expand infrastructure, and maintain fiscal responsibility frequently experience stronger long-term economic performance. Iraq continues working toward many of these objectives. Naturally, challenges remain. Political negotiations continue. Regional security considerations remain relevant. Oil price volatility can influence fiscal planning. Global economic conditions affect investment flows. Inflation, interest rates, and international trade developments also influence economic outcomes. Recognizing these challenges allows investors and observers to maintain balanced expectations while evaluating positive developments objectively. The comments regarding the close relationship between the hydrocarbon law and broader economic reforms therefore highlight an important analytical perspective. Whether one development ultimately precedes another may prove less significant than the fact that both represent components of Iraq's continuing modernization process. Legal certainty, energy investment, banking reform, fiscal management, and institutional development all reinforce one another. Recent oil agreements therefore deserve attention because they may strengthen Iraq's long-term economic foundation, not because they independently determine future exchange rate policy. For responsible observers, the most constructive approach is to continue monitoring official government announcements, central bank communications, parliamentary legislation, economic indicators, international investment activity, and implementation progress across multiple reform areas. This comprehensive perspective provides a more reliable understanding than focusing exclusively on any single event. As Iraq continues developing its economy, each confirmed reform offers additional information about the country's long-term direction. Some developments may have immediate practical effects. Others may contribute gradually over several years. Together, they help shape the environment in which future economic policy decisions will be made. For Iraqi Dinar followers, the key takeaway from today's discussion is that recent oil agreements may represent another positive indicator of ongoing economic development, while conversations surrounding the hydrocarbon law continue highlighting the importance of legal and institutional reforms. Both subjects remain relevant because they contribute to the broader picture of Iraq's efforts to strengthen its economy, attract investment, and build greater long-term financial stability. At the same time, it is important to remember that no individual agreement, law, or public comment should be interpreted as confirmation of any future exchange rate decision, unless such action is officially announced by the appropriate Iraqi authorities. Thank you for watching today's analysis. If you appreciate responsible, balanced and factual coverage of Iraqi dinar developments and Iraq's economy, be sure to subscribe to the channel and enable notifications so you never miss our latest updates. As always, this content is provided for informational and educational purposes only. It should not be considered financial, investment, or legal advice, and viewers should conduct their own research and consult qualified financial professionals before making any investment decisions.